Story 1. The man who stood in the rain until she saw him. This happened to me in 2018. At the time, I was commuting home late from night classes 3 days a week. I lived about 45 minutes outside the city, down a winding 2-lane road that ran along the edge of a nature reserve. It was peaceful. No intersections, no houses for long stretches, just forest, hills, and the occasional roadside ditch full of rainwater. That night, it was raining hard enough to make me lean forward slightly over the steering wheel, squinting through the rhythmic motion of the wipers. My headlights made everything look soft and reflective. Trees blurred into the wetness. Signs appeared too late, and everything outside the cones of light felt farther away than it actually was. I remember slowing down when I saw something up ahead. It looked like a figure, tall, thin, unmoving, off to the right shoulder of the road. The kind of shape you don't really see at first, just feel in the periphery. As I passed, I glanced to the side. There was no one there, just soaked grass, wind-whipped weeds, and fog curling around a wooden utility pole. But I swear, a moment earlier someone had been standing there. I kept driving. For the next 20 minutes, I passed no other cars, just rain and trees and that persistent, slight adrenaline hum in the base of my neck. The kind you get when your brain tells you something's wrong, but doesn't explain why. Back at home, I parked in the driveway and waited for the garage door to finish rising. I checked the side mirrors. A habit, nothing behind me. But I noticed for the first time that the left mirror was angled slightly downward, as if bumped. I brushed it off, pulled in, shut the door, locked the car, locked the house. Standard routine. About an hour later, I remembered something strange. The silhouette, when I saw it, had been facing away. Not toward the road, not watching my car approach. It was angled toward the ditch, like someone standing too close to the edge of a steep drop, motionless in the rain. That posture stayed in my head for days, and when I looked through my dashcam footage that weekend, trying to convince myself that it had just been a trick of the light, I found nothing. No shape, no shift in the shadows, not even a blur where the silhouette might have been. But I remember the fabric, dark, soaked. I remember the slight tilt of the head. I remember the posture, not panicked, not waiting, just still, as if it was already watching something else. That's the part I can't get past. If it wasn't there, why can I still picture it so clearly? And if it was, why didn't the camera see it? The next night it rained again. It wasn't as bad as before, but enough to bring back the same quiet tension, that feeling of being alone in motion. The road was even more deserted than usual. No taillights ahead, no headlights behind. About halfway home, I stopped at a 24-hour gas station to grab something hot. Soup, I think. I pulled into one of the side pumps under a yellow flickering light, got out, and did something I don't usually do. I popped the trunk. There was a blanket and a fold-up umbrella back there. I hadn't used either in months, but the thought of sitting in a cold lecture hall with soaked jeans again was enough to make me dig around. That's when I saw it. On the inside panel of the trunk lid, just to the left of the emergency release handle, was a handprint, a full one. Left hand. Palm pressed flat, fingers slightly splayed. It wasn't dusty. It was wet. There was no water on the outside of the trunk, just beads of rain where it had rolled off during the drive. But this mark, it had texture, a kind of greasy smudge, like someone had tried to brace themselves inside, maybe wipe moisture off a surface before pushing. I stared at it for a long time, trying to reverse engineer the logistics. There was no way I had opened the trunk since that morning. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even thought about it until now, and I never, ever leave it unlocked. I looked around. The gas station was empty except for a cashier behind thick glass, lit by a humming TV playing muted baseball. No other cars, just the hiss of rain on concrete and the smell of diesel. I reached up and touched the handprint. It was cold, damp, not fresh but not dry either. The kind of mark that's left behind by soaked fabric, not bare skin, like the print of someone wearing a glove or a sleeve, or the inner lining of a soaked coat. I didn't tell the cashier. I didn't call anyone. I didn't take a picture. I just closed the trunk and drove home faster than I ever had before. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, the bump in the mirror angle, the figure on the roadside, the way I had felt someone behind me on the highway even though no lights appeared in the rear view. Then I thought about something I hadn't noticed before. When I opened the trunk, the blanket had been moved. Not much, just slightly shifted, like it had been picked up and laid back down in a different orientation. The fold pattern didn't match. The corners were wrong. And under it, I found a long, damp strand of hair. Not mine. Whoever had left that print hadn't been standing outside. They had been inside. I didn't go back to class that week. I said I was sick. I wasn't. I just couldn't get in the car, not because I was scared of another encounter, but because I didn't want to see anything. That was the part I couldn't bear. The fear wasn't of violence. It was the fear of being watched and knowing it, of spotting a figure that didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't move. That third night, I turned on every light in the house and sat by the front window. It was raining again, softer this time, the kind of rain that makes no sound unless it hits metal. It was peaceful. I almost convinced myself I had imagined everything. At around 2 a.m., and I turned off the living room light and looked out. The street was quiet, no cars, no movement, just my mailbox, the wet pavement, and the puddle forming near the edge of the curb. And then I saw him. Not clearly, not like in a film, but I saw the outline. He was standing halfway between the mailbox and the neighbor's yard, shoulders hunched slightly, still, looking directly at my window. The instant I blinked, he was gone. Maybe he'd never been there. But I remember my hands shaking when I reached to close the curtains, not out of fear exactly, out of something colder. Recognition. I stopped driving that road altogether after that. Started taking the train, even though it added hours to my commute. I didn't even think about my car until weeks later, when I received a direct message from someone I didn't know. There was no text, just an image, a screenshot of a thread from a forum I didn't recognize, not Reddit, not anything mainstream. A kind of underground lo-fi message board with nothing but black text and nested replies. At the top was a photo of my license plate, time-stamped. The caption read, "She finally saw me." I didn't sleep after that. The police said there was no way to trace the source. The message was sent through an anonymous relay. The site was hosted overseas. The plate wasn't registered under my name. It was my stepfather's, which meant whoever posted it had followed me more than once. Memorized the numbers, waited, and for what? Nothing happened after that. No break-in, no trespassing, no threats, just silence. I don't know who he was. I don't know why he chose me. But sometimes when it rains, I find myself checking the trunk again, just to make sure it's still empty. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 2. The apartment that flooded without rain. Inside, this happened to me in 2022. I'd just moved into a second-floor apartment in an older part of Richmond, Virginia. The building was a converted brownstone, 3 levels, 1 unit per floor, with creaky steps and chipped molding that still held onto some kind of quiet charm. It wasn't much, but it was my first place alone after a long and messy breakup, so I took what I could get. The unit was oddly laid out, long and narrow, kitchen in the back, bathroom and living room in the middle, and the bedroom, my bedroom, tucked all the way to the front, with a closet that didn't quite close all the way. There was no central air, just old vents that hadn't been used in years, a box fan in the window, and pipes that groaned when you ran the water too hot for too long. I moved in on a Monday. By Wednesday, I noticed the carpet in the bedroom closet was damp. Not soaked, just damp, cool to the touch. I figured maybe it was left over from a steam cleaner or something from the last tenant. I didn't think much of it. By Friday, it was worse. I'd tossed a duffel bag of winter clothes into the closet, laziness mostly, and when I reached in to grab a hoodie, it was wet, not from the air. The bottom of the bag had been sitting in what looked like a small puddle that had formed right in the center of the carpet. The water was clear, no smell, cold. It hadn't come from above, though. I checked the ceiling, bone dry, not even a water stain. That night I called the landlord. She said she'd send someone over first thing in the morning. Probably a pipe leak, maybe condensation buildup. Nothing to worry about. The plumber came at 9 a.m. He was in and out of the unit for almost an hour, checking the wall behind the closet, pulling panels open, even getting into the crawl space above the hallway to look at the lines running to the unit above me. Finally, he came back in with his tool bag, shrugged and said, "There's nothing busted, not even a drip. You sure this wasn't like a spill or something?" I didn't answer. He noticed my silence, then added something I still think about. "If it is coming from a pipe, it's not city water. There's no mineral residue, no discoloration. This is clean water, like filtered. I don't know where it's coming from, man, but it's not coming from here." He left. I didn't hear back from the landlord. Over the weekend, I kept the closet empty, dried it with towels, bought a dehumidifier, left it running overnight. Sunday morning, the tank was full. I dumped it, checked the closet dry. I started to relax a little. Thought maybe it had been something from before I moved in. Old cleaner fluid, a weird spill, something rational. Then it rained. Monday night, just after midnight, I woke up to the sound of soft dripping. Not inside, outside, a steady, quiet rain against the windows. Distant thunder, a breeze through the cracked window frame. The kind of night I usually slept well through. But something made me sit up. I got out of bed and walked across the floor barefoot. The air felt colder, like something had sucked the warmth out of the room. I opened the closet. There it was again, a fresh layer of water, not pooled this time, but spread, like it had risen through the carpet from underneath. No leaking from the ceiling, no wet marks on the walls, just cold, clean water soaking the fibers from below. I stepped back and touched my foot. The water wasn't just cold, it was frigid. Like it had been drawn up from underground. That's when I noticed something else, the outline of a footprint. It wasn't mine, too small, narrower, like a woman's. But it was there, in the closet, faintly pressed into the edge of the carpet, toes pointed outward, like someone had been standing there before I opened the door. I didn't sleep that night. I should have moved out. I know that now, but moving costs money, and I had just started a new job with long hours and unpredictable schedules. I told myself the water thing would pass. Maybe it was just a weird interaction between the rain and the foundation, some weird pressure gradient from the lower units. I was grasping at explanations. Any of them would have been better than what I eventually realized. That week I noticed something new. The vent above my bed, the one near the ceiling, started to hum at night, just barely. A low, hollow vibration that almost sounded like wind, but deeper. I hadn't used the vent since moving in. The HVAC was disconnected, but sometimes late at night I'd hear something shift inside, a thump, a scrape. Once it sounded like a whisper. I told myself it was rats or squirrels, anything with paws. But one night, during another storm, I couldn't sleep. The wind was howling outside. I had left the window cracked just enough to let the air in, but the room felt wrong. Not cold, just still. Then I heard it, a voice, quiet, garbled by static, coming through the vent. I sat up slowly, thinking maybe someone in another unit had turned on a TV too loud, but the words weren't from a program. They weren't random. They were my words. It took a second to register, but I recognized the sentence. It was something I had said earlier that day, something mundane, a voicemail I'd left for a co-worker about a delivery pickup. But now I was hearing it repeated, line for line, in my own voice, through the vent above my bed. Not echoing, answering. The inflection was wrong, flattened, like it was reading a script but didn't understand the words. I stared up at the vent, waiting. The voice paused. Then it said another sentence, one I hadn't spoken, but it used my tone, my cadence. "You're listening now." I didn't move. My chest was tight. Every instinct in me was screaming to run, but I couldn't. I just kept staring at that black, grated square in the ceiling, and the longer I looked, the more I felt like someone, or something, was on the other side. It didn't speak again, but I could hear it breathing, not fast, just enough to let me know it was still there. At some point I fell asleep. I don't remember how. The next morning I unscrewed the vent cover. Inside, there was nothing. Just dust, no wires, no speaker, nothing that could have played a recording, but taped to the inside of the cover, on the back where it couldn't be seen unless removed, was a small scrap of paper. It was torn from a notebook. On it, written in shaky pencil, "I know your voice. Say my name next." I started researching, not out of belief, out of desperation. I looked into plumbing faults, structural moisture retention, even old mold studies, anything that could explain why water kept appearing in the closet, only when it rained. But none of it made sense. The insulation was dry. The foundation showed no signs of leakage. The unit above me was vacant. That's when I found something stranger. A small blog buried in the corner of an old paranormal forum. It talked about elemental imprinting, the idea that certain events leave behind a kind of energy signature, not visible, but reactive, usually triggered by natural elements, wind, cold, or water. One post mentioned something called an aqua phantom, a term used to describe phenomena where trauma expresses itself not in objects or sounds, but in presence through moisture. Water as a medium, not a message, a doorway. Most of the posts were incoherent, ramblings, but one stuck with me. It was written by someone claiming they had lived in a building where rain didn't just soak the walls. It summoned memories that weren't theirs. They described waking to the sound of weeping in a dry room, water running under doors that hadn't been opened, and voices, not ghostly or demonic, but familiar, mimicked, drawn from their own recordings. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't explain what was happening in any other way. A month passed with no rain. I started sleeping again. Even joked about the whole thing with a co-worker. Told them I was just dealing with an old pipe's ghost. We laughed about it. But on the first storm in March, I woke to the sound of dripping again. I turned on the light, walked to the closet. It was full this time. Water had risen at least 2 inches, soaking the boxes I had stored there, floating, perfectly still. There was no leak, no entry point, just cold, unmoving water. And on the mirror near the closet door, the cheap, full-length one I had leaned against the wall, a sentence had appeared in condensation, written as if by finger, "You left me behind." I stepped backward. The air felt heavy, dense. I turned around, and for a moment I swear I saw someone standing in the hallway, just past the kitchen. A woman, dripping wet, hair stuck to her face, mouth slightly open. She wasn't threatening, just sad. And then she was gone. I packed everything in a single night. I didn't give notice. I left the keys in the mailbox, lost my deposit. It's been a year. I haven't seen her since, haven't heard the voice, but every time it rains, I turn off all the vents in my new place, and I don't speak aloud, not even to myself. Story 3. The phone call that matched the rain pattern. This happened to me in late 2019. I was living alone in a studio apartment just outside of Portland, working remotely in IT support. My building was old, concrete-walled, mostly quiet, except for the occasional water pipe gurgle or elevator clunk. Rain was constant that fall. Not dramatic, just steady, grey and unrelenting. There were weeks when I couldn't remember what it felt like to walk outside dry. It was during one of those weeks that I got the first call. It was around 2:40 a.m. I'd been asleep with my phone on silent, but it buzzed just loud enough on the nightstand to wake me. No number, just unknown caller. I don't usually answer those, but something about the hour and the way the rain was hitting the windows like tiny fingers made me pick up without thinking. There was no voice, just a soft, consistent clicking, mechanical, repetitive. At first I assumed it was interference, a pocket dial or a misrouted signal. But the longer I listened, the more the clicking began to sync with something I recognized: the rain. It wasn't random. The clicking on the phone was perfectly mirroring the tempo of the rain outside. Same rhythm, same pacing. When the drops slowed against the glass, the clicks slowed too. When a gust of wind picked up and the rain intensified, the clicking surged in tempo, like percussion trying to keep up with a conductor. I sat up, half awake, staring at the phone like I was waiting for it to explain itself. And then it changed. The clicks split into two layers, one fast, one slow, like a beat inside a beat. I couldn't tell which one matched the actual rain anymore. It was as if the phone was feeding the storm a new pattern, rewriting it, and the storm was responding. That's when I noticed something else. My chest was tight, my breath shallow. I hadn't moved, but every muscle felt coiled. Like my body had registered something wrong in the rhythm before my brain caught up. The clicks grew sharper, almost like Morse code, but not quite. And just as I started to feel like it was building towards something, a message, a voice, the line went dead. The rain softened. I stared at the screen. The call had lasted exactly 6 minutes and 6 seconds. I didn't sleep again that night. The next few days, I tried to forget about it. I told myself it was coincidence, a bad connection. My brain trying to find patterns where there were none. I even ran a few searches on noise-induced pareidolia, the brain's tendency to impose structure on meaningless sound. The articles made sense, but that didn't explain what happened next. 3 nights later, I woke up to the sound again, not from the phone this time, from inside the apartment. It was subtle, barely audible at first. But once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. A click just offbeat from the rain, coming from somewhere inside, not electronic, not metal, more like fingernails on drywall. I got out of bed and stood still. Click, silence, click, click. It was behind me, near the closet. I walked slowly toward the sound, listening. It stopped when I got close. I opened the closet. Nothing. Just clothes and a few old boxes. The light flickered when I pulled the string, but otherwise everything looked normal. Then my phone lit up. No ringtone. Just a missed call notification. Unknown caller. Time, 2:41 a.m. I hadn't even heard it ring. The voicemail was only 3 seconds long. I played it. It was one soft breath. Not static, not distortion, just a breath. I turned the phone over in my hand. Something was wrong with the way it sat against my skin, like the vibration motor had locked up slightly. A low hum, like tension trapped inside the case. That was the first night I felt the pattern shift. It wasn't just the storm matching the call, or the call echoing the storm. It was me, my breath, my movements, my heartbeat. Everything started syncing to the rhythm of the clicks, even when I didn't hear them. I'd be washing dishes and I'd notice my hand motions falling into a beat that wasn't mine. I'd blink and feel like I was doing it too slowly or too fast. I couldn't focus at work. My typing became uneven. Some part of me was constantly listening, not to the world, to that pattern. And the worst part? The clicks hadn't stopped. Even with no rain, I heard them, not always loud, sometimes just the suggestion of them. A phantom beat behind the sound of the refrigerator or the pulse in my ear, but always there, waiting. By the second week, I wasn't sleeping, not really. I'd drift off and snap awake to nothing. Or I'd dream in patterns, static pulses, glass breaking in intervals, rain tapping on a metal surface with exact mathematical pacing. I finally talked to someone, a colleague who had done research in psychoacoustics, basically the psychology of how we interpret sound. I told him vaguely about what I'd experienced. He said something that stuck with me. "You're describing entrainment, rhythmic hijacking. It's rare, but it happens. Your brain hears something repetitive and starts aligning to it. Breathing, pulse, even thoughts." I asked how long it could last. He hesitated. "Usually not more than a few hours, unless the source keeps reinforcing it." I didn't tell him that I had already unplugged everything in the apartment, router, microwave, fan, even the fridge, and I could still hear the clicks. They weren't external anymore. They were embedded. That Friday, it rained again. I stayed on the couch with every light on. I set up a white noise machine to drown everything out, even wore earplugs. But around 2 a.m., I felt something shift, like the air had tilted. And then I heard the knock, not on the door, on the closet wall. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. A different rhythm than before, like it was testing. I stood up and walked toward the closet. My legs felt shaky. My body felt pulled forward, like I was out of sync with it. I reached for the handle, and the lights went out. Not all at once, they flickered, once, twice, then shut off completely. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, heavy. Then my phone lit up again. A call. Unknown caller. I answered it. There was no click this time, just my voice. It said one word, open. I dropped the phone, but I opened the door. There was nothing there, just my old winter coat, a few empty hangers. But in the back, on the carpet, was a piece of paper, the kind used for hospital forms. It had a diagram on it, a chart of brain waves. Underneath, someone had written in thick black ink, "You're attuned now." And the clicking started again, this time from inside my head. That was 5 years ago. I moved, changed jobs. Threw out the phone, replaced it twice, but when it rains, I still hear it. Not loud, not always, but enough. And on especially quiet nights when the air hangs just right and the drops hit the window in time, I can tell the rhythm is building again. I don't answer unknown calls anymore, but I still check the closet because sometimes it clicks back.